Oscar Crane, once a planetary BIOS engineer, now drifted between dying colonies. A broken man haunted by the loss of his wife. He chose the hardest, most dangerous jobs, staying away from anything that could bind him again. Carrick 7, a barren and hostile planet, fit that bill perfectly. A toxic world populated by rejects and the destitute. He was on assignment to assess the viability of reactivating terraforming hubs, but he found something else instead. 6 days into his grid scans, Oscar spotted her, a giant of a woman, violet-skinned and covered in scars, working alone in a salvage pit. Her name was Vari. She was a product of failed breeding programs, deemed unfit because of her size. She wasn't just discarded. She was marked, made illegal. Her muscles rippled as she worked with practiced ease on the rusting remains of machinery. Oscar's presence didn't faze her. Her harsh, untrusting gaze met his, but she didn't flinch. Their first interaction was cold, even tense. Oscar offered her water, which she accepted with silent necessity. It was clear she wasn't accustomed to kindness, and he wasn't there to offer it, only to do his job. Over the days, they shared space without words, their lives continuing in separate rhythms, until one night, a storm hit. Red Verge storms were deadly, heat and winds that burned skin. Oscar had been in the southern trench when the alert crackled through his scanner. He sprinted toward shelter, and as he reached a skimmer wreck, he heard pounding. It was Vari, her body caked in dust and sand. She collapsed exhausted. Without a word, Oscar pulled her into the safety of the skimmer. They didn't talk much in the hours that followed, as the storm raged outside. But when Vari broke the silence, asking why he kept returning to her, his answer was simple, because she shouldn't be alone. Her past, the breeding block that discarded her for being too big, seemed to haunt her. But Oscar saw something different, strength, not failure. He wasn't there to save her. He was there because she deserved more than just surviving. The storm passed, and so did their silence. The next day they worked side by side, passing tools and checking grid lines. Oscar began to see the depth of her knowledge, the skills she had honed on her own, in isolation. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving in ways he hadn't yet understood, and he admired her for it. Then came the night they spent together, not out of need, but because they both needed the comfort of not being alone. Vari confessed her fears, how the breeding council had told her she would never bear children properly, that she was a dud. She had learned to bury that pain, but in the stillness of their shared space, the truth came out. Oscar's response was gentle but firm. She wasn't broken. She was surviving, and that mattered. Days turned to weeks, and despite the chaos of Carrick 7, the two of them began to form a connection. It wasn't love yet, not the kind he had known, but it was something. In the heat of the planet's unforgiving atmosphere, amid the relentless work of keeping the salvage yards running, they found peace in each other's company. They had no illusions of normalcy, but they had something real. When the threat of the Directorate arrived, an armed patrol sent to reclaim breeding stock, Oscar and Vari fled. She didn't want to run, but for the first time she realized there was something worth running for. Together they navigated the broken landscape of Carrick 7, trying to escape, trying to survive. But in that escape, something more was born. Oscar found an old skiff, and they made their way to a hidden dockyard, but the patrol was closing in. A desperate escape followed, a gunshot, a chase, and finally, the skiff lifted into the air, taking them away from the only home they had known. As the stars became their only witnesses, they knew they had won the first battle in a life that had never promised them victory. Their journey ended on Brevi, a quiet station where people could start over. But they were different now. More than survivors, they had learned to choose their own fate. Oscar took her hand as they faced the unknown, and when she confessed she was late, the fear of a future ruled by their pasts seemed to creep back. But Oscar wasn't about to let fear dictate their lives again. They would face whatever came, together. In the garden of their new home, beneath the pale moons of a peaceful world, they took their first steps as more than fugitives. They were free, Oscar and Vari, their future uncertain but theirs to choose, now knew what it meant to be seen, to be loved, and to live. As she pressed her hand to her growing belly, Oscar whispered, "She's going to be strong, like her mother." And for the first time in years, Vari smiled, a smile not born of survival, but of hope.